All right, if all are ready, before we start the meeting, I need to read a statement from the city of Palo Alto. Pursuant to the provisions of California Governor's Executive Order N-29-20 issued on March 17th, 2020 to prevent the spread of COVID-19, this meeting will be held by virtual teleconference only with no physical location. The meeting will be broadcast on cable TV channel 26, live on youtube.com/c/City of Palo Alto, and live on the MidPenn Media Center at midpennmedia.org. Members of the public who wish to participate can do so by email, phone, or computer. To ensure participation in a particular item, we suggest calling in or connecting online 15 minutes before the item you wish to speak on. Number one, for written communications, please send email to hrb@cityofpaloalto.org. That's all one word. Number two, spoken comments via computer will be accepted through the Zoom teleconference meeting. To address the board, go to zoom.us/join. The meeting ID is 565-709-923. You will be asked there to enter an email address and a name. We request that you identify yourself by name, as this will be visible online and will be used to notify you that this is your turn to speak. When you wish to speak on an agenda item, click the raised hand icon. The moderator will activate and unmute speakers in turn. When called, please limit your remarks to the time allotted. A timer will be shown on the computer to help you keep track of your time. Number three, spoken public comments using a smartphone will be accepted through the Zoom teleconference meeting. To address the board, download the Zoom application onto your phone from the Apple App Store or Google Play Store and enter the meeting ID 565-709-923. Please follow the previous steps A through D that I've just read. For spoken public comments using a phone, dial 669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 565-709-923. When you wish to speak on an agenda item, hit *9 on your phone so that we know you wish to speak. You will be asked to provide your first and last name before addressing the board. You will be advised how long you have to speak, and when called on, please limit your remarks to the agenda item and time allotted. You can also find this information on the last page of our agenda. To better facilitate public comments at the beginning of the meeting, our meeting host, Vin Nguyen, will identify each person with a raised hand by name or last four digits of your phone number and request that you state your name and the agenda item you wish to speak on. If you wish to speak under any item not on the agenda, please state your intent to speak under oral communications. When it's your time to speak during public comment, you will be identified and provided 3 minutes to speak. Any callers with blocked numbers will wait until the end of the speaker's portion. The host will then unmute them one at a time, and all will be asked to speak. So thank you all for attending this morning, the first virtual Historic Resources Board public meeting.
Okay, so at this time we have 5 attendees, but there are no raised hands. So let's give them a few seconds to see if anyone wants to raise their hand.
Certainly.
Okay, seeing as there are still no raised hands, I think we can proceed to the next item.
All right, well, I'll open the meeting, and Vin, would you call roll? And I presume you'll do that in alphabetical order.
Correct, starting with the chair and vice chair. Chair Bauer?
Present.
Vice Chair Shepard?
Present.
Board Member Bernstein?
Here.
Board Member Kohler? Absent. Board Member McKinnon.
Attending.
Board Member Pease.
Here.
Board Member Wimmer.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Vin. Our first item on the agenda is oral communications. And I apologize for being repetitive here, but because this is a virtual meeting, there will be a lot of repetition of this particular paragraph. At this time, if you wish to speak on an item not on the agenda and you're using the Zoom application, you may raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak. The raise hand button is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. On my screen, it's on the left, but maybe another place. If you're dialing in from a phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. This will create a queue. The meeting host will unmute each speaker, display the time allowed for comment, and alert you to when you may begin. Ben, are there any individuals interested in oral communications?
At this time, there are no raised hands. Let's give them a few seconds to see if anyone wants to raise their hand. Okay, seeing as there are no raised hands, we can proceed to the next item.
Okay, agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Are there any, Amy?
No changes.
Okay, then let's move on to city official reports. The first item is the Historic Resources Board schedule of meetings and assignments. Amy, do you have any discussion of this? I presume that we will be meeting virtually until the county health department lifts the stay-in-place order.
That is correct. We are not going to have the meeting of April 23rd, so that should be a cancel. The next meeting on our agenda is May 14th. So we will give that a shot, assuming we have a quorum. If we don't have a quorum on the 14th, we'll try again for the May 28th. If anyone cannot make it on May 14th, please let Vin or myself know.
Okay, any board member questions for Amy? I don't see any. There is at this point another opportunity for public comments. Please raise your hand. Use the raise your hand feature if you would like to make a comment. If you are dialing in from a phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. 3 minutes would be allowed for any comment on this item.
Okay, at this time, there are no raised hands. Let's give them a few seconds to see if anyone wants to raise their hand. Okay, seeing as there are no raised hands, we can proceed with the agenda items.
All right, item number 2 is the public hearing quasi-judicial study session for 411 Lytton Avenue. Planning number is 19PLN-00348. It is an Historic Resources Board study session to consider Hayes Group Architects' request for a preliminary architectural review of the 3-unit residential project, which adds 2 subterranean housing units to a significant building, historic category 2, single-family residence, including exterior changes, a rear addition, and expansion of the existing partial basement. Project includes a request for bonus floor area of 2,500 square feet following successful rehabilitation and transfer of the bonus to an eligible downtown receiver site. The zoning district is downtown commercial CD/P, parenthesis P. Environmental assessment is not a project. For more information, please contact planner Sheldon Singh at SAHSING@m-group.us. Okay, staff report.
Thank you, Chair Bauer. This is Amy French, Chief Planning Official. I will be introducing Sheldon Ossing, the project planner, who has a presentation, and as well, we have an applicant presentation. Following those, we're enabled to take questions on the presentations. Sheldon?
Yes, good morning, thank you. And I'll just get the presentation up here. So I do have a presentation. The applicant, Ken Hayes, is also in attendance and has a PowerPoint presentation. I will operate that for him. And then as well as the consultant that conducted the peer review of the historic resource evaluation is also available for questions on the call. So this is a preliminary review of a rehabilitation work, as well as a 223 square foot addition of an existing Cat 2 house, as well as an addition of 2 units below the existing structure on a very small site, 0.06 acre site. The request would eventually include a major architectural review, off-site parking, as well as a bonus floor area. Since this is a preliminary review, no recommendation is sought at this time. So the project is located near the intersection of Lytton and Waverly, and the site is within the downtown CDC district, as mentioned previously. The site does include an 854 square foot single-story, single-family house designated as Category 2 in 2014. The proposal is for interior and exterior remodeling to rehabilitate the historic structure, and then as well as new construction, including a single-story addition at the rear to the house with 2 new subterranean units below the building's footprint. So within the surrounding is characterized by single, 2, and 3-story buildings. So the HRA is conducted in 2002, and that helped establish the integrity and eligibility of the building. That was peer reviewed in 2020, including an updated review of the Secretary of Interior standards for any proposed additions. And the HRA did identify character defining features as well as non-contributing features, and did establish a rehabilitation work program. Some of those have already been completed since 2012, and the applicant can go into more detail about that. But the HRA did find that the character defining features make it an outstanding example of a simplified craftsman style bungalow. The peer review also confirmed the findings in the HRA and provided some additional analysis on the Secretary of Interior standards based on the new construction proposed today. So regarding the rehabilitation work, it's really to conduct structural engineering assessment of the foundation and front porch, to replace the foundation, removal of any non-historic front and rear stairs or some pipe railing that's included in front. It's not historic, and also to rehabilitate the existing character defining features of the primary facade. And that's the front facade that you see here in the image. Regarding the new construction, on the left there is the footprint of the house. What's in red would be removed and demolished. On the right is what's being proposed. It's a 223 square foot single story addition to the rear. And then as well as 2 units, very small units, kind of micro units in a way, below the existing house. So this provides a little better view on the top, looking front towards the street. This is the back of the property, so you can see where you have to head down some stairs to get there, some steps. And then the second image, you're looking very similarly as the first one, but now towards the building, and you can see the rear addition to the house, as well as the entry to the new units. And then the other imagery you see from the adjacent property 437 Lytton, where you have the parking lot and looking down into the subject property. You see the rear addition using some materials that are different, not the same as the ones of the historic structure. And then the imagery below is just, you get a little more feel of how all this comes together with the units below the existing house and then the addition. And the cross section really puts it all together, where you can see that they're adding onto that basement below. There's a half basement now, so they're excavating. So why are we here? As part of the architectural review process, and because the site is designated historic resource, the HRB will review and provide some informal feedback. And this will be whether the project retains the historic character of the existing structure. Parallel to this process, the ARB will formally evaluate the project based on the architectural review findings and input from the HRB. So there'll be a follow-up meeting with the ARB, very similar to this, informal, and the applicant will take those comments and include those into their formal application if they so decide to pursue that. We did want to provide a little bit of summary on some of the impacts to the structure based on the project. So the south elevation is Lytton. There really wouldn't be any impact here, really positive impacts regarding making the project and the building more consistent with its historic character. The west elevation, you begin to see the rear addition, the use of the painted wood siding as a flat roof, which is the parapet is at the same height of the wall of the existing building. Then you start seeing the expansion of the basement, the use of the board formed concrete, the painted wood windows are a little different, but yet compatible. And then the north is really where you see the most impacted because that's the rear addition to the house, but it's not visible from the street. And then the east is the opposite of the west, so it's very similar. You see the same materials and the same type of impacts there. So since they are doing some rehabilitation work as well as a new addition, the project is subject to the Secretary of Interior standards, and the project was found to be consistent with those as described in the table in the staff report. Project continues the historic residential use. The materials of the original structure will be retained and preserved except for the portion of the rear, and the new materials will be compatible, not copy the structure. The existing structure also does not contain significant changes from the original construction. The materials, features, and finishes characterize their architectural integrity, and those will be retained. The rear addition could be removed without damaging the integrity of the structure. As mentioned previously, because of rehabilitation work, the code does allow for potential floor area bonus, and the project may be eligible for this in the amount of 2,500 square feet after completing the work. The owner does not intend to use the bonus on site, but the floor area could be transferred to a non-historic receiver site. So in conclusion, the project is consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards that propose both rehabilitation and new construction, and we are seeking some informal direction on the project to help the architectural review and the formal submittal. So this recommendation is to consider the proposed project and provide feedback on the project design, staff, and the applicant. So I conclude my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions. As I mentioned, the consultant reviewed, the peer reviewed, the HRE is also available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, let me start, Sheldon, by asking some questions, and then I'll go around to board members and just ask you individually if you'd like to make comments. I note that as I think all board members except maybe Kristen and Debbie will remember, this project, a similar project, came to the HRB in March of 2016. It was to join this property with the property next door. That project went all the way through planning and went to the council for approval, and the council returned the project to the owners for redesign. Do you have, can you tell the board what the council's problem with the project was then?
Yes, thank you. And I just summarized that a little bit in the staff report, but at a very high level, it did make it all the way to the council on appeal. The issue was for the adjacent property. There was a mixed use building. They had a large outdoor patio, and really that was the concern of the neighbors was privacy. It wasn't having to do with the single family house that's subject today, but it was really the project, part of the project that was on the other property.
Right, and when the HRB reviewed this, the board approved it 4-2. There were 2 dissenting votes on the approval of that project, but it still moved forward. Second question I have is, the lot size is 2843. What's the floor area ratio allowed for that lot? That's obviously a non-standard lot.
Yeah, they can do it's 1-to-1 basically. So they can do up to 2,800 square feet essentially, and they're under that now.
Okay, thank you. The historic inventory report, which was, I think, done back in 2012 by PAST, identifies, as your report does, that the double hung single light double hung windows are a very significant feature Those are wood windows as I see them when I travel. I visited the site yesterday by car. I'm wondering why the staff report would consider aluminum windows to be a compatible material when the building has no aluminum windows in it at all.
So maybe we can have the consultant, Richard Patnod, weigh in on that issue. So Ben, maybe you can unmute. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm curious just how the staff got to that point. And there's also another in the staff report on sorry, I have to get to the page. On packet page 13 under analysis, there is a paragraph that I don't think I have seen in any staff report that I find confusing. So maybe you could help me with this. It's under analysis, it's the second paragraph, and I'll just read it for you. As noted in the code, planning staff may review and approve minor exterior alterations to historic structures. Minor exterior alterations are those, and this is in quotes, those alterations which the director of planning and development or his or her designee determines will not adversely affect the exterior architectural characteristics, nor the historical or aesthetic value of the historic structure, its site, or its surroundings, end quote. The next line is what really puzzles me. The city considers projects that are evaluated and found to be consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards to meet the definition of a minor exterior alteration. That seems to me to be conflicting. This, I don't think, is a minor exterior alteration. And yet what this suggests is that if this is considered minor, that the staff would be able to make a decision about this, and that the HRB board members would never see it. Can you help me understand this?
I'm not sure if Sheldon was planning to answer this, but I can say that this is an HRB. When it comes back for the formal, this is an HRB project, HRB review. The part that is the minor part is the architectural review board part. So the HRB would only review a project that is minor. That is, it doesn't meet. It's not a 5,000 square foot over 5,000 square foot addition. So therefore, it doesn't have to go to the ARB, but it does have to go to the HRB because of the Secretary of Interior Standards Review.
So I don't mean to belabor this point, but maybe that language for the HRB review should be removed from the staff report, because this, as I read it, and others that I've spoken to who are not on the board read it, would suggest that that there's no HRB review here if it met Secretary of Interior standards. Okay. I think that I have other questions for the applicant, but we can wait. So let me just move down the list alphabetically. Martin, you're there. Martin, do you have any comments? Questions for staff?
Yes, yes, I just pushed *9. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chair Barr. Yeah, I think Amy, I think you just clarified. Yeah, so in the future, this project will come back to the HRB for formal discussion and formal motions. Is that correct?
I have activity in my house here. That's why I'm on mute. But yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. One other question is, let's see, so I don't have that in front of me on my iPhone right now. Who prepared the HIE and who was the peer reviewer? Second.
So the HRA was from past a company that was in 2012. And then it was peer reviewed by a colleague of mine with M Group. And he's also available to speak on his peer review today.
Okay, thank you. So M Group is from the city of Palo Alto. Is that correct?
We are a consultant, and we were hired to assist the city with that. Yes.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you so much for that. Let's see. I have a question on the proposed parking agreement. And the parking agreement is in effect or proposed for this project because of the adjacent property owner. Is that correct? Okay.
So the parking not really a part of this review for the HRB, but will be for the ARB. Yes, the project requires some parking that cannot be supplied on site, and so the code does allow for off-site parking. In this case, the applicant is pursuing the parking at the adjacent site at 437 Lytton.
Right. And I understand from what I've been reading on this project is that both properties are currently owned by the same owner. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. In the event that the other property owner, if that property gets sold to a different person, is this parking agreement in effect in perpetuity, or is that parking agreement evaporate?
It would be in effect in perpetuity, yes. We would have an agreement.
Okay.
Three-party agreement.
All right. All right. Thank you. When it comes times to talk about the project specifically, Chair Bauer, I'll have questions about that when you're ready for that portion of my questioning.
Okay, Michael, you're next. Do you have any questions for staff?
I don't have any questions. I guess you're not taking comments right now. You're just taking questions.
This is just questions for staff report. We will get to a discussion of the project after the applicant makes their presentation.
Okay, I'll withhold my my comments until we get to my comments.
Okay, Christian, any questions for staff?
Not specifically about the project. I just want to reinforce your surprise at the paragraph about the minor exterior changes. I also saw that was cited in the draft report for the certified local government report. And I just was going to say I would be interested in, I don't know if this would be called a study session or not, but learning more about this process and what constitutes a minor change. Particularly in aggregate. I'm just thinking of situations where there might be many requested minor exterior changes that none of them individually is major, but taken together, they might be. So I don't know if it would be possible in the future with staff to meet over this particular policy.
Well, maybe we can have that conversation when we get to the certified government report. We can have a little more conversation about that.
That would probably work better. Thank you.
All right, Debbie, any questions for staff?
I think most of my questions can wait. Just one larger question with the previous application as to regards the house. Is this new application the same? The design?
My recollections is not, because I don't think they had the two residential units in the basement, but Sheldon would know better.
That is correct. That it is very different in that you have the two new units below. But definitely the applicant in his presentation can provide a little more context on that as well.
Thank you.
Okay, and Margaret, how about you? Any questions for staff?
Yes, I was wondering if you could quickly review the zoning for this project, which is, the zoning is CD-C and in parentheses P. So I was just looking up what that means, and it looks like it's the commercial downtown district with a sub-district of P, which is pedestrian. I just thought it would be great for the staff to just sort of review that zoning district and how having a residential use in that district impacts the project, if any. And then also if you could touch on the fact that the project is in flood zone X and there's a basement proposed, is there any impact, FEMA impact, or does the flood zone X mean that they can do a basement? Because usually in a flood zone, you can't do a basement. So those are my two clarification questions. And then I do have further comments later.
Sheldon, maybe that's...
Well, maybe since I'm sharing screen, I kind of losing a little bit of resources here in front of me. Sorry if I have some time to just look at that and get back to the question.
I just quickly looked up what the CD-C parentheses P meant. I mean, I can read what I pulled up. CD means commercial downtown district. And then the sub-district, oh, and then -C means community. And then in parentheses, P means pedestrian shopping. So it's commercial downtown, community, pedestrian, which is the general zoning and then the sub-zoning. I just thought maybe we could talk for a moment about what that means and if it has any impact or any considerations that we should take considering the fact that it's a residential project in a commercial downtown zone.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I'm sorry, I know there's the downtown does allow for mixed of uses. And so in this case, you're looking at a historic structure, which you don't want to really change the front of it too much and the integrity of it. But certainly for new projects, there are certain factors and design criteria, such as the downtown urban design guide that we take into consideration to make it consistent with the pedestrian commercial and overlay. But with historic structures, it's a little bit different, and then we have to follow the Secretary of Interior standards.
Okay. And then any comments about it being in the flood zone X?
Well, those would be, certainly the project was reviewed by Public Works Engineering, and they would have to follow all the requirements for dewatering, excavation, and be consistent with the FEMA guidelines. So that, that will come. We did do an informal review of that. Nothing came up that was negative that would prohibit them from doing something. But as we go forward with the formal project, we will get more insight on that.
Okay. I mean, I guess flood zone X allows the addition of basements. I know that in a lot of areas where a project is in a flood zone, in R1 district areas, a basement's absolutely not allowed. But I think X might be the flood zone that's not as impacted or not as at risk, but it's pretty close to that creek back there.
Yeah, flood zone X is the good flood zone. I mean, that's the one where things are okay. It's the other
Less restrictive, right? I think that's right. Okay, I just thought I'd mention that.
Okay, thank you, Sheldon. If there are no other questions, let's move on to the applicant presentation.
David, I'm sorry, could I ask one more question?
Certainly.
Is it ever appropriate for the HRB to comment regarding fencing?
I think after the applicant presentation, you can comment on any portion of the project that would affect the historic resource.
Thank you.
Okay, Vin, applicant presentation.
Sheldon, which applicant should I unmute to give this presentation?
Be Ken Hayes.
Okay, Ken, you're unmuted.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for continuing the work of the city during this crisis. Appreciated by all, your commitment. My name's Ken Hayes, and I'll be doing the presentation on behalf of my client, Brad Heekian. Brad is also joined onto this Zoom meeting, so he's probably just going to listen, but if there are ever any questions for the owner, he is part of the presentation or part of the meeting. I'd like to thank Sheldon for helping us get the application to this point. And I have a brief presentation that I think Sheldon's going to control the slides. So the first slide is, and I'm actually just going to put my image up there because I'm in a place where my internet connection is very slow And I'm afraid if I have video on, it's going to be a problem. I didn't realize that till after I hooked up. So I have a nice shirt on and everything, but of course I'm in my pajamas. So the site is indicated here. It's a mid-block site on Lytton between Kipling and Waverly. As Sheldon pointed out, it's a small site, 2,843 square feet, and it is zoned CDCP. P is the pedestrian overlay part of it. The surrounding properties, next slide. So the site here is indicated in yellow, 411 Lytton. The surrounding properties to the rear are mostly residential. It's the RMD zone, but of course 411 is part of the commercial downtown district with the pedestrian overlay, and you can see that indicated on the zoning map. The next slide, please, shows some existing views of the existing property. This is from the 437 Lytton side. So this is the side of 411 Lytton where the other property is that is owned by Mr. Ahikian. So this is what we're calling, I think, the east side of the building. Next slide. This is the rear, and at the rear of the building, you can see that stair. It has a handrail railing that's already been replaced. It's not original, but the landing below is the contributing portion that's going to be removed, and the window and door to the door at the landing, the window to the left, would also be part of the removal to basically affect the addition to the rear. The existing cottage, next slide, was built in 1901, and it is category 2. Mr. Ahikian raised it to a category 2 in 2014. And it is actually part of the first residential subdivision you might have read in Palo Alto. So this is 437 Lytton. Next slide, just trying to give you the context. This is the other corner. And so we sit between two commercial buildings, essentially. Next slide. And I think that slide is one that Sheldon had in his presentation as well. You can see the parking lot and then the cottage. Next slide kind of gives you our program, and sort of 5 points wanted to make. So we want to add 2 living units to increase the number of units to 3. And the reason for this is a single family use is a non-complying use, a non-conforming use in the CDC. So the only way to add on to this building is to make it, so the owner under the previous application wanted to add a bedroom, but after that application was defeated, the owner came back and said, I want to add a bedroom still. Well, the planning department said you can't expand a non-conforming use. So that was the impetus of part of this project, is how do we expand the existing single family use that's a non-compliant use in this zone. And the only way to do that is to make it a complying use. So adding 2 units below sort of reclassifies this building as, or the use as, multifamily, and multifamily is in fact a permitted use in the CDCP. So then point 2, as a conforming use, we'd expand the existing house by adding about 225 or 223 square feet for a bedroom and a bathroom, a little laundry area. And then we would develop the 2 studios in the basement. We wanted to create some outdoor landscape areas that would be associated with all 3 living units. And so we'll show you how we've accomplished that for the subterranean living units. We want to respect the historic integrity and comply with the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, which goes without saying. And we think that this is a very sympathetic way of achieving that, given all the constraints that we have on the property. And then we wanted to figure out a way to free up the front of the building so we wouldn't be blocked by cars, which in my opinion makes it also more pedestrian friendly. And so because Mr. Ahikian owns the property next door, it gives us this opportunity to enter into an agreement that would provide the parking for this small housing. These 3 parking spaces is what's required. And so we can achieve that next door. So the next slide, please, Sheldon, is some just architectural precedents on the left-hand side to give you an idea of the aesthetic that we're working in to differentiate from the shingle siding, but still use a wood product. but oriented vertically instead of horizontally to again differentiate itself. The next two slides there in this main slide are just examples of kind of living just below grade and how, how interesting it could be to have the living unit open up to an outdoor courtyard. Next slide. Oh, you've got it. Okay. Actually, you've gone two ahead of me. I'm tracking this on my iPad. Sorry. The slide that he's already passed over again were images of the materials. There we go. Thank you. The shingles on the right-hand side would be reminiscent of what's there today. And then board form concrete is what we're working with. Obviously, foundations in that time and era were often created with board form concrete. And then on the left-hand side is the vertical wood siding. Next slide. This is just imagery of what we envisioned for the garden. The unit or the space on the right is kind of a subterranean space that has a living area that opens onto it. I think it's just a wonderfully beautiful space. And then the slides on the left there give you an idea of some of the vegetation that we're thinking of below grade. Next slide. So this is the footprint of the 853 square foot existing building with what's happening on the inside. We are going to be making some modifications on the inside, but next slide, Sheldon, is the site plan that you just saw in Sheldon's presentation. Next slide shows a setback. So there's a 10-foot residential setback. So when you're working with residential uses in the CDCP, there's no setbacks except at the rear. And that is a 10-foot setback. And so our addition has to comply with that. Next slide. Fortunately, the deeper side of the site allows for an addition, freeing up the western or southwestern side of the site for solar exposure. So it could be a warm, sun-filled space at certain times of the day. Next slide. We're anticipating, 3 different access points that could lead into the site. The existing in the center, obviously, to the main front porch. Off to the left, it could be a visitor parking space, but it would also serve as a way into the units that are below grade. And so you'd walk in there and then go down the stair. On the right-hand side is another pathway that would lead to the rear of the site. And that's kind of set up so that if the unit on the left or the unit on the right, if we wanted to have independent kind of access into them, it could be achieved this way. Next slide, I think, shows the parking in the lot next door. And so we would actually create a gate at the back of the site that would link the parking area to the site. And so all 3 tenants could have a parking space located there at the rear. Next slide shows you the addition in tan. So that's the interior addition. And then there's a deck off the back. And so that's kind of the light blue that you see appended to the tan area. Next slide. Again, shows the 2 stairs that come down into the outdoor space below. Next slide. And then the outdoor space in front would be available to everybody, but it's kind of the front yard still for the main house, thinking that the rear deck would be more of a private outdoor space for the existing home itself. In this slide, let me just point out, you can see the changes on the inside. So we're going to keep the 2 bedrooms on the left, reconfigure the bathroom that exists between them right now. And then the living room becomes conjoined with a little bit larger kitchen. And then you can see behind the kitchen is a small bathroom with a stacked, laundry, washer, dryer. And then you step down into the master bedroom addition at the rear, where we have just enough space for the bedroom and a closet. And then the door leads out to the deck. Next slide. Just in case you're interested, we've got to provide trash and recycling. And so on the left-hand side, they're highlighted in that lavender is where we would have a refuse recycling enclosure so that you wouldn't be looking at garbage cans like you do today. Next slide, Sheldon, please. This is the below grade area. And so there are 2 small units. The one on the left is about 478 square feet, definitely a micro unit. The one on the right is a little bit bigger at just under 700 square feet, but they're both studios. They both have access to light and air, and their entries come off of the rear sunken garden. We felt it's important to have kind of light and ventilation to be able to move through the building. So at the front, there's a couple light wells there that we would have a window basically into that light well that becomes another way out, perhaps, of the unit themselves for escape. And it also provides a place where we can put a compressor for the mechanical system. The bathrooms, you can see, are located in the back to kind of form a core bathroom dressing area. So they're nice units. The one on the right has lots of storage and a little bit bigger kitchen. Next slide. This is an elevation at the top. The west elevation shows the stair as it descends to the courtyard, and then sliding doors basically would provide entry into each of the units. We're trying to preserve the integrity of the historic hipped roof, which is a main feature of this square style cottage. And so by keeping the addition roof lower and flat, it essentially just becomes a wall or a fence that is added to the existing building. The prior application from 2014 actually had a roof on top of the addition, which in my mind, upon later kind of studying, kind of cluttered up the original hip roof of the historic house. Really no change to the front of the building. Next slide. This is the east side at the top. So that faces the parking lot. There's going to be a fence and a hedge along that side, but by and large, we're rehabilitating that facade of the building, which I would say is visible from the parking lot. And then you can see at the back of that is where we would have the addition, and then to the very rear of that addition, it steps down and that becomes the deck. The elevation below would be the north elevation, and so that's from the courtyard, kind of looking back at the building. The existing window in the shingle wall is the one on the right there. The hip roof obviously is the existing. The board form concrete would be reminiscent of a foundation from that era, and that forms the walls of the courtyard. It could be really wonderful, and it picks up on the horizontality, in my opinion, of the shingle siding and gives the building something firm to rest on. Next slide. Cross section through the building. The one at the top is a cross section through the front porch, if you will, kind of through the building and into the courtyard behind. It shows the smaller studio below, and the drawing below is a cross section the other way that looks back at the historic building towards Lytton, and it shows the new bedroom, which is associated with the historic house above, and then the new studio below. And then we just have some slides of imagery, Sheldon, that we can kind of walk through. So we've got the historic siding and the wood trim, and we've not decided on paint color yet. So please don't, I'd be happy to hear your comments on paint color, but we do plan on painting it after we restore any rot in the shingles and the wood siding. We will be changing the front porch and the handrails. We need handrails, but we don't like the pipe rails that are there. And then the brick porch appears to not be historic. So we'd restore that in a fashion that would be consistent. And we have clues from a house around the corner that was also part of this property at one time, and it has a wood porch. And so we'd like to put a wood porch back onto this. Next slide. Just a view of the front. We would be getting rid of the picket fence across the front of the building. We're not showing the hedge, but there's going to be a landscaped hedge that will go there and kind of define a bit of a front yard so people don't just kind of walk onto the property. Next slide. Just from the other side, you can see the light wells on either side. Those would be covered with a grate, so you could actually walk on top of them if you had to. But it's an open grate for light and air. Next slide is just an overall aerial kind of looking down just to give you some perspective. So the next slide starts, or I'm sorry, some slides of the next slide there, Sheldon, shows you the basement, outdoor courtyard. We're not, including the rendering of the landscaping, but, envision this with landscaping. You have a landscape plan, conceptual plan in the plan set that you have in front of you that shows what we're thinking there. And then the next slide would show kind of the outdoor space associated with the smaller unit, and that's the stair there that runs up to Lytton Avenue, the board form concrete on both sides. And And then the next slide kind of gets into what our historic preservation is going to be. At the bottom are the existing elevations today. The row right above that shows kind of a comparison of before and after, if you will. I probably don't need to dwell on that too much, but the proposed alterations are, replace the foundation. It's an old brick foundation that's falling apart. Remove the historic, the non-historic front stair, and the rear stair is historic, but it's just contributing. There'll be a partial demolition of the rear facade wall with a new entrance, obviously, and construction of the rear bedroom. And then we'll be rehabilitating the historic character defining features on the primary facades. And really, there's going to be 3 facades, next slide, that are essentially untouched, which is just, I think, wonderful about the proposal. There's the main hipped roof and the dormer, which are kind of, I guess, iconic for this style. The symmetrical 1/1 double hung wood windows on either side. The temporary carport will be removed. Like I said, that little picket fence is non-historic, that'll be removed. And can't really see the brick porch, but you see the pipe rails that stick up above the picket fence. That will also be removed. The next slide shows the wood shingle siding that where they're rotted, we'll have to replace. But by and large, we'll be restoring them and then putting a finish coat of paint on them. Next slide. The hip roof actually has already been reshingled, and that has gone to probably a more traditional wood shingle roof as opposed to an asphalt shingle roof. So the owner elected to do that a few years ago after the prior proposal was defeated for the building next door. But we will restore the rafter tails, the overhangs that do need a lot of work. Next slide shows the front porch and the colonial revival style simple columns and the wood cap, and the porch is kind of listing. We're going to have to get in and put new foundation most likely under that, and then do the restorative work that's going to be needed at that point. And I think the second to last slide, next one, again, just shows the 1/1 double hung windows, and you can see them going down the side of the building as well. So obviously all those will be touched upon and restored as part of this work. And then the last slide, and I can take some questions, is sort of the opposite slide from one of the first slides that kind of gives you an overview of the composition, the stairs, and the sunken garden in the addition at the rear. And so thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions and look forward to those.
Okay, well, board members, let's ask any questions you have, and we'll have a discussion after the question session, and let's do this in reverse order so Margaret doesn't always have to be last. Margaret, any questions for Ken?
Yes, I had a couple quick questions. So in regard to the front facing light wells, so again, I always go back to my knowledge of the different zoning neighborhoods, and I know that this is a residential project in a commercial zoning district, but in the typical R1 zone, we wouldn't be allowed to have light wells in the front yard. So I don't know if this, having the 2 light wells in the front yard triggers the necessity to have a variance, or if that's allowed in the zone. I just don't know.
Yeah, so thank you for the question, board member Wimmer. The setback for this zoning district is 0 at the front, so technically there is no front yard, and so there's no issue with the light wells being there.
Okay, and then thank you for clarifying that you're proposing to put flat grates over the light wells, because those would have required to have a guardrail around them if they were open.
Terrible.
Which would impact the view, the historic front elevation. But then again, my other question is, if there's a flat grate over it, are those considered egress light wells or just for light?
They're just really for light. They're not required for egress. They're for light and ventilation. I don't want to go back to the plan, but because I'm not controlling this, but
Yeah.
we want to be able to draw air through the units. And so there is a window that would be an operable, almost like a big casement door that would allow the resident to open that and actually walk into that light well if they needed to, but primarily for being able to open that and get ventilation through the unit. So they could open their sliding door and then open that rear, ventilation casement window, if you will, that is into that light well. And so it would allow air to come through.
Mhm. And it looks like in terms of the relationship of the size of that window to the light well is quite a bit bigger than the window itself.
Correct.
I don't know if I'm sure you've considered that, because the light wells are to the corner of the building. So they're quite wide, but anyway, I
Right.
just wanted to point that out. And then I also had a question in the back. If you look at the basement floor plan in the back, there's where there's the stair coming down for that back basement unit.
Yes.
At first glance, I saw this unidentified rectangular space that looked like it could almost be in the future. And that's actually what the view on the screen is, of the perfect view of that. See how there's the back unit, there's the stairs that come down on your very left, and then there's a deck above this foundation. And then on the floor plan, you see that that's a whole space under there, but that's in the setback. How does
That's not a space. So it would be a retained, there's a retaining wall under the deck, coplanar with the back of the master bedroom.
Right.
So yeah, we can't go into the setback. That's why that's like that.
So that's just a foundation.
That's right.
I see. Okay. And
Good
then
point.
my last quick question was, in terms of, and this always happens to me, utilities, like you have to have water heaters and you have to have furnaces. And I know that you'll incorporate that in somehow, but those always take space. So
Right.
I don't know if you've made any provisions, and that's not under our purview, but I always look for that, because I always think, where's all that going to go? Because you've got such a nice plan. And so I just mentioned that just because.
Yeah, and because we're dealing with such a small site and a sensitive structure on that site, we obviously want to hide what we can and incorporate mechanical systems in areas that are still accessible but not necessarily prominent. So the house, it's also a very small project, so that's good. The mechanical equipment will likewise be very small. The house, original house, has a nice attic space. And so that attic space will be ideal for a horizontal furnace unit. And we're probably going to put an on-demand water heater that'll be associated with the new bathroom laundry room addition. The units below, that equipment will be in the light well. There'll be a small compressor in there, and then just a little fan coil inside each of the two units. We haven't decided where the on-demand water heaters are going to go. But of course, if those are gas, which might be a problem now, they would need a flue. And so it looks like everything's going electric anyway, so we wouldn't have to worry about the flues. But those will most likely be in the unit.
Okay, thank you for
Kind
the
of more of a
clarification.
European approach.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Debbie, any questions for?
Yes. Well, so we're going to do comments later.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so I think I'll just wait.
All right. Christian, any questions for Ken?
No, thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, I have one question. The front porch of the house is deemed to be non-historic. Can you give me some idea how old that porch is? Because sometimes these additions, if you might call it, or changes, acquire historic integrity because they've been there for a long time. And that's the crux of my question is, has it been there for a sufficiently long period of time to acquire historic integrity?
This is Ken. The HRE identified the railings as being non-historic. So when I say the porch, I'm not referring to anything that is wood. So the porch right outside the door obviously is all part of the original. The walls that surround it are part of the original, along with the columns and the roof. There's a brick addition that comes off of, it looks like it's slammed up against the former wood shingles, and that has the pipe railing mounted to it. That's what we're assuming is not historic and will be removed.
Uh-huh. Okay, the pipe railings then is what your main thought is there as far as changing.
So the pipe railings most likely are going to well, obviously be removed. We have not got to the point of the design of the new railing. We're just showing right now kind of a conceptual rail, but the stairs are over 30 inches at the top above grade. And so anything over 30 inches, it requires a guard.
Mhm.
And so the new railing is probably going to have to be some kind of a picket, rail. I'll probably go around the corner and look at the house that was the sister house to this house and see what that one had, if that's still original.
Okay, but the basic porch has been there for a long time. It's part of the original structure then.
That stays, and so it's like 4 steps that are made out of brick.
Mhm.
That looks like a brick that's not part of the period. I don't know when it was done though, board member.
Mhm.
And only the railing was addressed, and it looks like the railing's attached to that brick. So we're making an assumption that they were done at the same time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Martin, if you're still there, your turn, if you have questions. Martin is on mute, I see. Well, let's see. There's Martin. Are you there?
Hello, I'm here. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good. Okay. So I have a question and a comment. Should I wait until everybody asks questions first? Chair
Yeah,
Barr?
we're just asking, Ken, any questions you have about the project? We'll have a discussion following this.
Okay, my discussion will probably request Ken to respond to my comments. So should I just wait until you get to that portion of our discussion?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, I will wait.
So, all right, Ken, I wanted to applaud your use of board form concrete in the foundation and also adding the housing units. I think it's a good design characteristic that actually mimics the original house, but won't be confused as being part of the original project.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you know where the bonus FAR square footage is going to go.
I do not.
Okay. Is the lower outdoor space a community or like a condo area, or is that just for the lower 2-unit residents?
Good question. I think we would like to make it just available to the lower units, because the upstairs, if you will, occupants have the deck at the back and the front yard. But we haven't talked through that enough, probably with my client. And so we have not proposed these will be condominiums, by the way.
Oh, okay. So,
And we've not proposed the condo map yet, just because this is all preliminary. We really want to get feedback before we take the next step. We think it's just a great way to add units and make the use conforming.
okay. Last question. You've got aluminum windows in all of the new addition elements. but the building has wood windows double hung. I can see having wood casement windows, but I'm having some trouble understanding why aluminum would be considered compatible. I do understand the differentiation part, but I'm
Right.
having trouble getting to the compatibility part.
So I think that I'd be hard pressed to look at a window from, 15, 20 feet away and say whether it was a painted wood window or a painted aluminum window, if there's a sash and a frame. And I would envision that these sliding doors would have, there'll be sash units, and it's not going to be. I don't envision these anodized aluminum. So we're gonna pick probably a dark paint color and have these Kynar coated most likely. And so I think what's important would be the dimension of the sash. And frankly, I think 20 feet away, you're not going to be able to tell. And obviously the aluminum would be a much more lasting product than the wood. Although, got to say, these wood windows have been on this house for 115 years.
Okay, yeah, wood windows tend to last a long time if you paint them.
Well, I would disagree with that. I've already replaced the wood windows on my house that I built in 1987 because anyway, these old windows, these redwood windows, you're right.
Okay, thanks, Ken. I think this is a very thorough presentation. Let's now we are going to move to public comments. So please use the raise your hand feature to indicate you have a public comment. Raise your hand button is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you're dialing from a phone, you can press *9. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Vin, do you see any raised hands?
At this time, there are currently no raised hands. Let's give the attendees a couple seconds to raise their hand if they want to.
Certainly.
Okay, seeing as how there are still no raised hands, we can proceed with the agenda. And I just want to point out that Debbie has her hand raised.
Oh, Debbie.
Yes. I have some comments. I want to commend the architect for spending time looking at 385 Waverly. I mean, it's really kind of a rare opportunity to have a pair of houses extant, right. And that house, built at the same time, appears to have been lovingly cared for, and it's fresh and intact, from what I can tell, and is painted in the same way as this property at 411 Lytton is currently. One difference is the Waverly property does not have shingles. It has horizontal narrow boards cladding it. And that brings me to just a reservation I have overall. I'm struggling with horizontality versus verticality in your addition. And I liked what you said about the board formed concrete. And I agree with David. I think it's very nice. And you said that you felt it reflected the horizontality in the shingles. So I'm surprised that you've chosen to go with such a vertical cladding on the addition. It's, I think, possibly what is literally coloring my view is the images we're working with. I'm so glad you said you haven't made a final decision about paint. But between the stark contrast in color and the extreme verticality, I find it very jarring. And, I realize that the intention is not to mimic the historic features of the structure, but I find this incompatible. And I guess we'll get I think it is appropriate in our purview to talk about color. I look up the guidelines for treatment under rehabilitation. So I guess we'll revisit this when you've made a decision about color when we see this the final time. But I would express now reservations that I have about going with this very dark gray or dark brown that has been so popular and I believe is losing favor. I feel like it's starting to seem like a very dated and stylistic approach in everything, if you know, interior design, fashion, exterior paint color, and the fencing. Actually, I have the same issues with. So, I just looking at these images presented today, I feel like it's this kind of, I don't know, sanitized approach to integrate the whole thing, and I feel like the historic house is just getting lost in it. What does everyone else think?
This is Ken. It's my understanding that I don't normally participate during the discussion. Is this contrary to your understanding?
No, Ken, it's fine if you want to make a comment. I was just going to say I had my mute button on. At this point, because this is a study session, we only need to make comments like yours, Debbie. I mean, we're not going to, presumably the final project, when it comes back to the board, will have a materials palette and
Yes.
colors and for all of us to work with. So I don't think we need to spend any time on that. So did you have any other?
No, should we spend time on the question of horizontal versus vertical? Or maybe I'm the only one that's troubled by that in the addition.
Well, let me ask all of the board members to comment, and then we can discuss after we get the full a full sense of, or a complete sense of what the issues might be.
That's
So, all right, Martin, let me start. We're going to go back into alphabetical order. Comments?
Okay. All right. Chair Bauer, this is Martin Bernstein. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Chair Bauer. So hello, Ken, and hi, Brad. Martin Bernstein, HRB member. Again, you always do great, stellar presentations, Ken, and thank you for another one today. Looking at the drawing on my screen, it's the aerial view from northeast. I think it's image number 22 on my screen, and then item number, and then page 23 view from patio looking northeast. Are those available to other board members plus Ken?
I have it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I also have the same concern that board member Debbie mentioned about the horizontality and the verticality. Ken, you mentioned horizontality, and I totally love the horizontal board form concrete for the foundation, serving as a plinth, you might say. And when I look at the aerial view of from northeast, my very first immediate reaction was I see the differentiation because of the verticality, but not the compatibility. So my comment will be if the horizontal feeling of the shingles plus the board form can be continued on your new upper floor addition, above grade addition, if that can be horizontal boards, now you got the compatibility plus the differentiation. So that was pretty jarring to me, where as proposed, I don't see any compatibility between the new and the old. So if you're just changing that horizontal siding, then I think then that meets the Secretary of Interior standards for compatibility and differentiation. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Martin. Michael, any discussion?
Thank you, Chair Bauer. I also have some concerns about the issue of compatibility that Board Member Bernstein brings up. This is always a constant battle between being compatible and also differentiating additions on historic properties. I think the thing that stands out most strongly to my eye is the fact that the flat roof on the addition is not compatible with the general shape of the roof of the main house. I think some type of hip roof would make it more compatible. I think you have enough elements in the addition that differentiate it without having to go to a flat roof. I think that would be my biggest comment, that the visual appearance looks like it's something that's been stuck on there, and it's not very appealing from a historic standpoint with the original structure. So I would encourage you to modify the flat roof into something that's more of a hip roof that is compatible with the original structure. There's plenty of elements in your project that differentiate it so that nobody's going to be confused that it's part of an original structure.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Kristen, you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just like to concur with the concern about the vertical lines on the addition in the back. I share those concerns.
All right, Margaret, you're muted.
Okay. Yeah, these are all very interesting comments. I am wondering if instead of having the vertical siding, if it's paint grade and you just paint it the same color as the shingles, would that make it at least blend a little bit more? I mean, it looks as though the wood siding is meant to be natural wood material. It wouldn't be painted. That's what this presentation is indicating.
Correct.
Which, if that was a paint grade material and it was painted the same color as the shingles, maybe that would allow it to blend a little bit more. But I agree that we're always looking for the differentiation.
Yeah.
And this project is clearly a great example of differentiation. However, Martin brings up the very interesting, but is it compatible, I guess? And then also Michael's comment about, I don't know if the applicant, if Ken has considered having a low hip roof, that might make it seem a little bit more compatible. I think that's worth taking a look at least, but I mean, the vertical doesn't really bother me too much, but I understand the rest of the board members' concern. And I mean, maybe if when it comes back, we could see some variations on the siding and in terms of color, I mean, I think obviously we're going to maybe review that at a later date, but I like darker colors. It makes it pop out a little bit more because this tiny little cottage, you just walk by it and you don't really notice it. So if with color, you can really make the color can have an impact on the sort of the street noticeability of it, and it's so small, it can compete better with what else is going on. And one side note, which has nothing to do with this. I mean, I hate that little low wall that's concealing the parking, the entrance to the parking lot. And it looks like now they've stuccoed over them, but in some of these photographs you see when they used to be that blue tile. I've always hated that. So I know that's not on this property.
The building next door.
I know, but doesn't that same guy own that? I mean, at least if they could square it off or put some vines on it or make it an art installation. I've always hated that. Sorry. That's right. On a tangent. No, strike that. I take that back. Anyway, that's my input. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Margaret. I would just take a wild guess here that blue tile wall will be coming down. It wasn't in the last presentation when the bigger project was submitted in March. I just want to say I share the same feelings that other board members have expressed about vertical siding as opposed to horizontal. I also share a concern about the fact that the addition is a flat roof. That certainly is differentiated, but again, I'm not sure how compatible that is. Typically, what we have seen in additions to Category 2 houses or buildings in Professorville is that the material used to differentiate an addition from the original building would be the same. If it was wood shingles, it would be wood, but you'd have a different profile. It would be wood siding, or in some cases, you could, if you had a specific shingle style on the original house, you just differentiated the shingle style in the addition. In Peninsula Art League building that came before the board several years ago, in addition to that building had a very heavy dash plaster finish. The new building also had plaster, but it was smooth. So we had a compatible material because they were the same, but the finish differentiated the old and the new. And so I'd say the other thing that I brought up earlier about the windows, at least on the above grade windows, what distinguishes the double hung windows is the way in which they are framed on the outside by the exterior trim and interior as well, but we're not concerned with that. And again, I see these two windows on that addition as being stark and not compatible with the style of the rest of the building. So those are my strongest concerns about the building. I'm assuming, and I like the idea, this is going to be a condominium project because I think that lower area will then become joint use space, and I think that needs it because basically there's no other space on this property where you could actually get off the street. And then I'm assuming when this project comes back, the fencing materials would be detailed.
Yes, but I think what we're thinking is that it would be a natural, natural wood siding, basically, or not siding, natural boards that would define the boundary of the property.
Okay, great. Looking forward to seeing this. Any other comments that any board members would like to make? I'm not seeing any raised hands. Okay, this does not require a vote because it's a study session. So with that, we will move on to item 4. Thank you, Ken,
Thank you.
For spending time with us today and explaining the project.
Yep, thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for all your comments.
Okay, moving on to item 3, it's the review of the Certified Local Government Annual Report for the 2018-2019 period. Amy, do you have a staff perspective you'd like to share?
I do. Can you give me a minute? I'm
Sure.
going to upload my screen.
That's
Thank you.
fine. So following Amy, while Amy is loading this, following her comments, we will have a period where the public can also comment, and then we can discuss the report. And typically we have not voted on this report, but if board members feel we need to do that, I would be open to a motion to do so. Amy, you ready?
Yes, and I think I've cleared out my, oh gosh, here she comes again. I have issues here at home. My college student daughter is home and trying to get the dog into a dog wash. It's quite a little drama over here. So
Okay.
yeah, I'll start. Okay, so can you see my screen? I've shared my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right. The one note is this is the first page of the report that I would be sending by April 17th to the Office of Historic Preservation. And you probably see the date of the commission board review is incorrect. It says March 26th. That's because I had originally planned to bring this to you on March 26th, but COVID-19 happened. So I will make a change to that date to say April 9th, today's date. So that's one change I'm planning to make. Then let's see, can I move this forward? How do I do that? Okay.
You have to scroll down.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Okay. So the letter, I have a cover letter that goes with this. And it talks about the 2 awards we received for the Eichler guidelines, the neighborhood guidelines that we produced and got approved by council in 2018. the awards we got during this reporting period were the California Preservation Foundation Award and the Docomomo Award that we also received. So that's a feathers in our cap. Our next, then item 2 is about implementing our comprehensive plan policies for historic preservation. And we've been talking about that over the past year. We've been implementing policy 7.2. We've done 32 resource evaluations now. 22 of these were found ineligible for California Register, but we did find 4 single-family residential properties to be California Register eligible, and we found 6 commercial properties or non-residential properties were eligible for California Register. So we talk about that in the report. We have an inventory upgrade, 526 Waverly, that was the Toy and Sport World property. And then just a note about outreach that we did to the realtor community about that new program that's related to policy 7.2. Then we also, have a slide here about the California, certified local government, which Palo Alto is a certified local government, and we're in good standing. And because we're in good standing, we file these reports each year. We are enabled to submit an application for grant funding through the Office of Historic Preservation. We did that in the past with Professorville guidelines. We didn't do it with the ICR guidelines. Those were on us. We have in reserve an application to submit for this mid-century era context statement. We've had, issues with staffing in the past. We still have that issue. We were considering submitting it in May this year, but COVID-19 happened. So we've been struggling with other efforts. And I'm thinking it might be unlikely given the economy to rely on taking something on with consultant assistance, but I put a pin in that for the moment. The report includes an attachment, which is where we are with our comp plan preservation policies. We're doing pretty well with the 7.2 and some other items that we're processing. Salvage and reuse is going along. Some future year comp plan goals for historic preservation are on the screen. We've talked about those. We're not looking to take those up this year, but that's future years. The goals that I had in the report, they're kind of holdovers from last year's report. Some of these things we began and some we didn't. So here are the 4 goals that I am thinking to send for this year. You can weigh in on those if you'd like, but continuing to do evaluations for California Register in accordance with policy 7.2, and working with folks who want to upgrade their properties category in the inventory, as well as any property owners who wish to become nominated for the National Register or California Register. There are now tax benefits available from the state for properties that are actually on the register, California Register. And then hopefully moving forward with the HRB subcommittee proposal for tailored Mills Act program. So that's something that was begun a while back. There's one more, so I intend to revise the report to reflect these 4 goals. There is a 5th goal that I can also list, and it's the next slide. I had started looking at the demolitions of the potentially eligible homes and properties that the Dames and Moore report covered in 1998, and kind of looking at cleaning up some of that data. There's a little bit of confusion on numbers. And also just seeing, about the demolitions. And we're doing better now because we have a comp plan policy that addresses having a look and evaluating before allowing demolition. So this is kind of a snapshot of time from 2004 to 2020, how many of these properties have been retained. And this list reflects I don't really have a full conversation of this today, but we could put this on a future agenda to discuss if you'd like. But I thought that this certainly counts as a fifth goal of tracking the demolitions that we could put on our report for this year. So I'll end there and let the folks comment on the board if we have any comments from the public. David, do you have any requests or suggestions?
Well, let's move to a public comment access. So if there are any people who are participating here and want to make a comment, please raise your hand using the Zoom feature. If you are calling in on a phone, press *9 to let us know that you'd like to make a comment, and we'll wait for a minute or two to see if anybody is interested in commenting. And then Vin, if you don't see anything, just let us know.
Yeah, there are currently no attendees, but let's give them a couple seconds to see if anyone wants to join.
Just like any HRB meeting, we don't have a lot of attendees.
Yeah. Seeing as how there are still no attendees, we can proceed with the agenda.
Okay, thanks. Any comments from board members? I think it would, let me just start by saying, I think it would be very interesting for us to look at the last piece of information you provided about demolitions.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when we're back in council chambers in 2022.
Well, goodness. Can we hope for better than that or sooner than that?
Yeah, well, some of us are in the high risk category on this board.
Yeah, but you might lose a lot of structure in the interim. So.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm being facetious. So I think that would be useful. I think the rest of the report is pretty straightforward. Any other comments by board members? Debbie's, I see no.
Well, I did want to.
Christian, go ahead.
I did want to return to this issue of minor exterior alterations.
Yes.
Right.
You brought it up. I was also mystified that it was in the study around the project we just discussed, because it's irrelevant to that project. So I wondered why it was there and so much copy space was devoted to it. And then I found it in this report. And I just think it's something I'd like to better understand. I understand that there is a ordinance that this can, this quicker process can be invoked. But again, I would like to understand better some definitions here. And also I could foresee a situation where somebody comes in with many, many minor changes, each one of them insignificant in its own, but taken as a whole might lead to major impacts. And would this be a path that would bypass us under this process?
Let me try to explain. So I was worried a little bit in the last item that I might have confused the issue. So whenever there's a 3-unit residential project, it has to go to the Architectural Review Board. That's considered a major project. If that had been a 2-unit project, then it wouldn't have to go to the ARB. It would only have to go to the HRB because it's in the downtown, because it's listed on our historic inventory through Palo Alto. In addition, it's a California Register eligible property. So because of those reasons, let's say it was a 2-unit project, it would only be going to the HRB and then not the ARB. Okay, so hopefully that's clear now on that project. As far as cumulative impacts, that's a CEQA situation. So being a California Register eligible property, we have to look at the California Environmental Quality Act potential impacts of a project. So if there are, if a number of minor changes to a historic resource are cumulative enough to become a major impact, then that's an impact to a resource, and that's a CEQA impact. And then there would have to be, mitigation measures looked at. If there was a desire to do a statement of overriding considerations because the project was so important, the council would have to take that on. In this case, we are hoping that project then, with the changes they will make and submit for their formal application, that we would be able to find that it does meet the Secretary of Interior standards and is not an impact, a CEQA impact. As far as projects that are outside the downtown, and even some that are in the downtown, if there are minor changes that don't really rise to the level of the HRB that we can handle with our consultant, who's a qualified consultant, we have done some of those at a staff level and not brought those to the HRB, sorry. Anything in Professorville, we do bring to the HRB. Most of the downtown stuff we do bring to the HRB. So I don't know if I'm helping with that understanding. Certainly, we have the opportunity, Christian, for a retreat. We do a retreat every year. We had been looking at April for a retreat, but that's postponed at the moment. We will hopefully do one in the fall. That I'm hoping that we will be able to come back together this fall for a retreat and get to talk about some of these topics at length.
Amy, I'd like to suggest that we add that item to a retreat topic list. I think Christian brings up a very important point. This sequential chipping away of an historic resource is, I think, a potential as the city begins to implement this no gas line, gas connection to projects. I think we're going to see a lot more projects that are going to be incrementally remodeled so that the gas line can stay. Large commercial projects and large residential projects, they won't care, they'll just comply, but it's the single family or duplex residences that I think we will see that happening. And so we ought to have a policy in planning department that makes these so-called small changes just that. And that means small. Moving a window a foot from its approved location is a small change. Removing the window is not a small change. So we need to have some kind of discussion, public discussion about this, and a sense of the board that the council can use and the planning department can use when making these decisions. Good retreat.
Yeah,
suggestion.
Great idea.
All right. I don't see, Martin, do you want to make any comments?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair Bauer. Three things. One, the one that Christian just mentioned about these minor changes. If a minor change is at a staff level, does that staff level include consulting with the City of Palo Alto's historic consultant to discuss if it is in fact a minor alteration?
Yeah, so we have an on-call consultant relationship with Page and Turnbull for projects. Most projects we're using Page and Turnbull. In this case, we have M Group as our consultant, and they have historic preservation expertise on staff. That was Richard Patinode, who I believe was participating in the call this morning in the Zoom meeting. And so that's, less common that we have a different firm handling our reviews, but definitely building permits that come through for historic resources, we engage Page and Turnbull, our qualified professional historic preservation consultant.
Great, thank you. As far as the accomplishments for 2018, 2019, it talks about adoption of code changes. Is that included? I know there were things where only categories 1 and 2 can apply for some exceptions or other provisions. Now it's categories 1, 2, 3, and 4 that can use all those potential incentives. Is that correct?
Yes, and we claimed that in the reporting period for 2017, 2018. That was an accomplishment during that reporting period. What we do claim in this period is the subdivision incentive that we did associated with 874 Boyce, the sister homes on Boyce.
Yes, thank you.
So that is a change that did happen during this review period from 2018 to 2019. So we are claiming that as an accomplishment.
Do you recall the changes that included categories 1, 2, 3, and 4? Is that chapter 18? Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes, that was related to his home improvement exceptions in particular.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's see, love the fact that you mentioned a Mills Act subcommittee. So I encourage the Mills Act subcommittee, HRB subcommittee, to continue working on that when that's available to be worked on. Good. And Amy, you mentioned something in your report about tax benefits for what kind of properties did you suggest? Okay.
So with the new California law that passed in the fall that we reported out in an earlier HRB meeting, this enables properties that are actually listed on the California register to be eligible for tax benefits for improvements to the, and I believe it's income tax for the cost of improvements to those resources. So that's why I say we stand ready for anyone who wants to get their property actually on the register. We stand ready to help with that.
Okay, that includes just non-income producing residential properties?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Wonderful information. Okay, thank you so much. Those are the only comments I have at this time. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Chair Bauer.
Okay, any other comments from board members? Margaret, Debbie, Kristen? You're muted, Kristen.
There we go. Sorry about that. I was having trouble with the unmute. I was just glancing back through the draft report. Did I remember correctly about an initiative or a nascent initiative about reusing historic elements that are taken out of houses that are modified or other structures that are modified? Was that in here?
I think that's part of the Public Works Department's initiative that Phil Boble came before the board and described, but I think that was before.
I read it in this draft, something about it in this draft.
Oh.
I think I might have noted the salvage component. There is something that, the Public Works Department.
Okay, so that's all off somewhere else. Okay, thank you. I just thought it was really interesting and something that should be pursued. So thanks.
Okay, again, we haven't voted on this in the past, and unless there's a change in heart here, I think we can just move on to the next item.
Sure. If anyone, I'll just say, if anyone has any edits that they see that they would like me to capture, for instance, the training for each member or anything else, just send me an email and I have one more week to fix this up and send it off.
So on that note, Amy, can I interject?
Yes.
Certainly.
On that note, I was looking and I see that I don't have anything recorded for under my name. And we are required as board members to do at least one training per year, right?
Yes.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be directly related to historic. I mean, if it's about architecture in general. So I know as a designer, Margaret, you probably have something to share.
Yeah, I'll have to look back and see. I know I've done a few things, so okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, it got a little awkward because May 2018 was our preservation conference in Palo Alto, but that was the prior reporting period.
Got it. Okay.
Martin, did you want to say something?
Yes, Chair Bauer. Let's see, Amy, I'm looking on your report here. I don't see the names, and including mine, of my reportable action for the training. I'm looking at I just have 7 pages of your report. Is my name listed? I sent in to Vin my 2 activities. Is my name listed as?
Yeah, I captured your trainings on the report. I'm not sure what you're looking at right now. This is the report I'm showing on the screen is just a PowerPoint, not the report itself.
Okay, I just have the PowerPoint. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
if you look online, we have the packet online, and you can look there to see. And also, I believe Vin sent out the packet by email last Friday. You can find it there as well.
Okay, so I'll look at. So I'm showing that it's showing that I met the training requirement. Is that correct?
Yes. It's
okay. Good. Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
All board members, Martin excluded, should look at the report, make sure that your training is in fact on there. just before next week so that we get an accurate view. All right, let's move on to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes of the Historic Resources Board draft minutes for February 13th, 2020 meeting. Public comment is permitted during this review. Let's start with any board member changes or additions to the draft minutes. Are there any?
Yeah, I saw that.
I'm not seeing any. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm using that facetiously, but I don't see anybody stepping up. Martin, did you want to make any comments?
Let's see, I'm scrolling through my emails looking for that website. Still looking. I'm just scrolling through my emails looking for the staff report, looking for the announcement. I'm looking for an email from Vin. I'm looking through all my emails right here.
It's April 3rd. Vin sent out the agenda package, and it was at the end. I think it was at the end of that package. It's a separate.
Okay, I'm going to April 3rd. Still looking. Here we are, April 3rd, and here's packet. Okay, let me open up that email. I see April 3rd. Clicked on it. It's opening up. Here we are. 5. Let's see. There are 5 attachments. I'll start with the last one. Let's see if that's the minutes. Attached for the minutes. 1 of 20. Going through here. Scrolling down. 1 of 20 pages.
I got that.
Oh, I have to reload. It says on my computer.
While you're doing that, Martin, let me note that we will be taking a roll call vote on this after we hear from any members of the public that want to comment. And I'll just call the roll alphabetically. And then you either say a, yay, or nay for yes or no. All right.
Okay.
So Martin, are you?
Yeah, it's I'm downloading right now the minutes.
Okay, well, Amy, would it be appropriate to go to see if there are any public comments that people can make? All right.
Yes.
So Vin, again, this is the same protocol we've used earlier. Please raise your hand. Use the raise your hand feature to indicate you have a public comment.
You're gonna be on TV here.
Buttons located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're dialing in, press *9. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We'll take a moment to let anyone use those devices.
We currently have no attendees in the meeting room right now, so we may proceed with the agenda item.
Okay, that done. Martin?
Yeah, so I just I have it right now. I'm looking at the minutes. Let me take a look here. Going through each of the pages here.
Sure.
Still going through the pages.
So reading it's online.
Michael, Martin is looking at the minutes, see if he has any changes or additions. There was, I gave a opportunity for the public to comment, but we have no public currently attending the virtual meeting. So when Martin has finished his review,
Yeah.
we'll.
Okay, I'm not going to have it. Yeah. Hello, Chair Bauer.
Yes.
Yeah, it's yeah. I don't see anything of. I don't see that I would have any comments or corrections. Okay.
Okay. If no one else has any additions or corrections, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll second it.
First, we have to have the motion.
Oh,
I make a motion for approval.
All right, Christian moves to approve the minutes. Michael, you second?
I second it. Yeah.
All right. Okay, in order, in alphabetical order, please say yay or nay for approval or disapproval. Martin,
Let's see, I do see that on the minutes is a project that I represented, so I can't vote on that portion of the minutes that includes my presentation to HRB. So I have to recuse myself from participating on that.
okay,
So
so
I guess I'll have to, I
think
can't
you can
vote on.
abstain. And yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to recuse. You can just abstain.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I'll abstain because my client's project that I've represented HRB, so I can't vote on the minutes.
okay, so let me amend my statement a minute ago. So it's yay for yes, nay for no, or abstain for not voting. And Martin has
Okay,
abstained. All right.
Correct.
All right. Michael,
Yay.
let's see, Christian,
Yay.
Debbie,
Yay.
Margaret.
Yay.
All right, and I'm voting yay as well. So that's, what is it? 5 yays and 1 abstention. Okay. We are at the last part of our meeting. Subcommittee items. There are no subcommittee items I know of, and there's only one subcommittee that needs to be reconstituted, and that's the Mills Act subcommittee. Margaret and I were on that with Brendan when he was on the board. So maybe other board members who would be interested in participating in that subcommittee could email me or Amy. Just don't email all of us, and we can reconstitute that. I think it's very close to being done. So, and I'd actually just like to move it out of the HRB and get it on to the rest of the process. Okay, next item. Margaret.
David, sorry. I feel like on that item, I feel like it would be good for us because I was on that committee, but, and also Emily Vance was on it as well, right?
She was the planner when we were working on that.
Right. And she did such great documentation. It seems like it would be nice, at least for us to revisit where we left off. It's been so long.
Amy sent me the files, and I looked through my files. So we're not starting over. We're actually, I think we're at the last 10%, which is where we define certain issues.
Okay, because I have very little track record besides meetings and my cryptic notes that I took, but that's great.
Okay, if we need one more person on that subcommittee, we can only have 3. So if one of you, besides Margaret, if somebody would like to be on that with us, then let me know, and we'll try to move that forward. Okay, board member questions, comments, or announcements. Are there any? I'm not seeing any.
I have a question.
Martin.
Yes. So I'm curious, how does the board feel about if we have meetings like this all the time instead of meeting in person?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think I personally prefer meeting in the council. I'd like to be able to share the space. I think it's of value to be in the same place. But with COVID-19, that's going to be difficult until there's a vaccine for those of us in the high risk category. So
yeah,
I don't know.
That's my off the cuff comment. So maybe study sessions where we're not taking any formal actions. We can all work remotely, but when it comes to formal times for motions, maybe just meet. Anyway, just a query. That's all.
Well, excuse me, just as a follow-on to that, as far as a retreat goes, I would rather not have to wait until late in the year to do that as a new member, I would be willing to do that or interested in doing that, even if we have to do it via a session like this one.
Okay, we can look towards perhaps June, or we'll look and see what the availabilities of the members, because we like to have everybody available for retreats. So I guess look at the calendar, the regular meeting dates, and send in if you have issues with any of those dates. We can start looking to an earlier, sooner than September. It takes a little bit of an army to make these meetings run successfully. Of course, this is the first one that we've dealt with, so we had more people in the background helping. So seems like it went fairly well. So we can try again in May.
I actually, I think this has gone much better than I anticipated. And I want to thank staff for having practice runs for
that helped
board members. It does help, and the more you use this particular software tool, the easier it is to get to become comfortable with all of its features. So I think we should consider a virtual retreat.
Okay.
I don't see, since that can all be driven by, mostly Amy, that's your work. And it is discussion. We can make it open to the public. That's not difficult.
Yep.
I don't think. At any rate, it does, I would like to do like final approvals of projects like the one that we reviewed today as a study session in person if we can, but again, I don't know how fast they'll turn that around. Anyway, any other comments?
Well, I think the only comment, this is Mike, the comment that I would make, it's a little more difficult to engage the public with this type of meeting. So I think a regular meeting offers some benefits that we can't achieve through the virtual meetings here.
Well, I would follow that up and say I agree with that. I don't think there's any substitute for an in-person meeting from time to time, but I think there are a lot of indicators pointing that this is going to become a new normal, and we ought to get used to it. And I would say if we could have a retreat sooner based on using the technology, we ought to look at that seriously. And if it's proper, we ought to talk about how to structure that before staff goes to a lot of work to put it together. They did an excellent job today. Thank you very much for that. But I don't see it as being running Zoom continuously through a whole day. There might be ways of breaking it up or making it more humane in a way, and being able to move forward. But I don't think this is going away anytime soon.
Yeah, neither do I. I agree with all that what Christian has just said. And maybe the way we could do a retreat is actually have it in discrete parts. It could be part A, B, and C. We just do 2 hours max, and that would be enough.
Yeah, I think we ought to, if there's a way to bat that around informally, or to have a little subcommittee look at that, I think it's worthwhile doing. Again, I'm new to this, so I feel like I would lose a lot of time at becoming effective as part of this group if that retreat winds up being in the fall.
Yeah,
so noted. We'll work on it, and I'll reach out to David with topics, and we can communicate David on what date seems like a good idea based on availability.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if there are no other comments or announcements or questions, that's the end of our agenda. So that would be the end of our meeting. I'd like to say a very big thank you to staff for making this move seamlessly. And I think for the first try on this was pretty good. I watched the council meeting on Monday night, and frankly, I think we did better. We had
a little simpler, maybe. Well, I think we ought to give every staff a big hand together. So we can do that.
Congratulations, and thank you all for being here. I'm sorry, Roger.
Staff.
Yeah, I'm sorry Roger wasn't able to join us, and he may be able to join us at a future meeting. So everybody stay safe, stay well, and we'll look forward to seeing you all at the next meeting, whether it be in person or virtual.
Thank you, David.
All right.
Good job, David.
Take care.
Thanks,
Take care.
everyone.
Be well,
Same to all
everyone.
Bye-bye.
of you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.